This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
South African consumers are increasingly asserting their rights in the used vehicle market, as recent rulings and enforcement actions show both dealerships and financiers cannot ignore defective cars or unfair sales practices. The National Consumer Commission recently concluded a 3-year investigation into used car trader We Buy Cars, resulting in a 2.5 million rands administrative fine and an order to refund more than 3.4 million rands to affected consumers. Complaints revealed that the company had refused to provide redress following the car sales agreements contravening the Consumer Protection Act. And today, to take us through this conversation of what all of this means, we have two guests that are with us. The first guest that we have on the line is Prudence Molewa, who's the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission, as well as Nicola Mawson, who's a personal financier, lead writer, and an IOL contributor. So welcome to our guests. We're going to start off with Prudence, who is the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission. So Prudence, can you briefly explain to us what triggered this investigation into We Buy Cars, and how long did the process take?
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. So, as you know, the National Consumer Commission has a mandate to protect consumers and deal with complaints in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. Over the past 3 years, the Commission has been receiving complaints from consumers regarding the quality of vehicles, and also the fact that when they did then complain to We Buy Cars, they were not getting any joy in terms of receiving redress. Then the Commission decided to embark on a formal investigation in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, and we made certain adverse findings with regard to contravention of the Consumer Protection Act, just around the quality of the vehicles. As you know, consumers have a right to good quality goods, and also in the event where consumers have bought products that are not of good quality, they have a right to receive redress in terms of the statistics of the Consumer Protection Act. So the redress in the form of what we refer to as the 3 R's: replacement, refund, and repair. So consumers were not getting that. So the adverse findings were around that. This then kick-started our engagement with them with regard to the adverse findings. And I must say we then had, negotiations going on with regard to how they can then rectify this. The outcome of the negotiations is what we have in front of us, with us having agreed with them in terms of the CPA, for them to pay an administrative fine of 2.5 million, to refund the total of around 3.4 million to the 31 consumers that we had received complaints from, and also the revision of the terms and conditions to align with the Consumer Protection Act, which then means then the terms and conditions of how they did the transactions with consumers, wherein they limited consumers' access to redress, wherein they had terms and conditions, for example, saying that consumers accept that in the event where the cars are defective or the motor vehicles are defective, they accept that they will not hold We Buy Cars accountable. And then we also agreed that they needed to make a commitment for consumer awareness programs, wherein they would enhance consumer education when it comes to the purchasing of pre-owned vehicles, the rights that I've already alluded to. And over and above that, I think something that we have not done before. The agreement for them to create 300 job opportunities at various levels across We Buy Cars over the 5 years, to which the National Consumer Commission has to receive an update every year over the coming 5 years. So those are, in essence, the outcomes of the investigation and the agreement with regard to the consent agreement with regard to how they will then rectify the conduct and also sort of punitive measures that they've agreed to in order for consumers to then receive redress.
I hope that We Buy Cars will follow through on those particular commitments that they made, because oftentimes people do make commitments, but unfortunately we lack mechanisms to actually follow up whether or not they are living up to those commitments. And I'm glad you said that they will be reporting to you from time to time. So I think it would be important to keep the public abreast about those particular developments. But let me bring in Nicola now and ask him about the specific provisions that that customers have under the Consumer Protection Act. You know, what are those protections? What should customers be aware of whenever they buy goods as a result of this particular act that is there, the Consumer Protection Act?
Hi, Kabense. Hi to you and your listeners. Apologies if there's trucks going past. I'm on my way to Clarence in a car where I have had a warranty claim. Prudence, and you'll be pleased to know that it was sorted out. So in terms of the CPA, it's all about fairness, quality, and accountability. It talks about contracts must be written in plain and simple language so that, you know, Joe public can understand them. So basically, when you buy goods, the CPA gives you automatic, non-negotiable rights to receive them in a safe condition. They need to be good quality, working order, and free from defects, as well as fit for use. So it's quite important to note that there is a 6-month implied warranty of quality. So if a defect shows up, as Prudence said, you can demand a repair, replacement, or refund. And what's important is that's your choice, not the shop or wherever. It also protects consumers from unfair contract terms, misleading advertising, hidden exclusions, and fine print that try to strip away your legal rights. And you cannot contract out of the CPA, even if a consumer signs an agreement. But what is important to note is that the CPA is not a buyer's remorse. So if you buy curtains that don't match the paint on your wall, you can't claim them back. You can't take them back and claim under the CPA that you can, you know, change them out. There's also a limited cooling off right for direct marketing sales, but it usually doesn't apply to purchases like We Buy Cars or that sort of thing. It doesn't protect consumers from wear and tear. So if your brakes wear out on your car, that's normal operating wear and tear. And it doesn't protect you from defects that were fully disclosed and that you accepted at the time of sale. So, and I think Prudence can maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but if a car is sold specifically as is, or what we used to call foot stewards, and the defects are clearly disclosed and explained, the CPA may offer limited protection. But, you know, you can't hide faults. So if I go and try and buy a car that's been in an accident and they don't tell me it's been in an accident, when they know it's been in an accident, then they're at fault. And I can return the car, I can ask for my money back, I can do all sorts of things under the CPA, including complaint to the NCC.
No, thank you very much, Nicola, for that. I think the message there is that before we buy cars or any goods, we must be well informed about those goods, especially if they've been used before. Now, coming back to you, Prudence, I'd just like to know what sort of mechanism was used to reach a conclusion that the fine that must be imposed is 2.5 million rands. Because, I mean, looking at the amount of sales that We Buy Cars do, I'm sure that is not too much money for them to pay out. So what sort of considerations were taken into account to reach that particular amount?
And so it was really a very intense process of negotiation with We Buy Cars. what we took into consideration was the fact that they were willing to amend their terms and conditions. Number one. Number two, they also took into consideration the 3.4 million that they would be spending in refunding the consumers. So that's in terms of redress of the consumers that were involved who had complained to the National Consumer Commission, as well as further commitments that they had made. So also the cost of the 300 jobs that they would be creating. So the value proposition of the entire settlement was really discussed at a deeper level for us to look at the fines that may be imposed by the tribunal, as well as what we had on the table in terms of the redress to consumers. And also, I think, future commitments as well with regard to the issue of consumer awareness programs and stuff like that, that we will also be monitoring to make sure that they are doing the right thing. So it wasn't a thumb start. It was really looking at the total cost of what is at play in terms of job creation, future programs, money, 3.4 million that they will spend on consumers. I just wanted to also maybe clarify something in terms of qualify something that Nicola said. In the Consumer Protection Act, the issues of disclosure, and I think it's one of the key points in terms of what we were looking at, because the terms and conditions of We Buy Cars were stating up front that consumers have understand that the vehicles that they have bought, they would not be able to get full redress, thereby being excessively one-sided, making it the consumer's obligation to accept that the supplier would not have liability. So in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, there is a specific section that talks to unfair contract terms that are excessively one-sided, and also the fact that consumers cannot contract out of their rights in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. So even if you have it in the contract to say that I understand as a consumer that I can't hold the supplier liable, that term is immediately an unfair contract term, therefore illegal in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. And I also want to emphasize that the consent agreement that we entered into has been endorsed by the National Consumer Tribunal, thereby making it at the level of High Court judgment. So it's not like a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, wherein they can decide not to comply with. It is actually at the level of, endorsed by the National Consumer Tribunal, making it at the level of a High Court judgment.
Thank you very much, Prudence, for that clarity. And I think that gives us confidence that indeed the commission will do its best to ensure that We Buy Cars fulfills its commitment. We have a caller from Alex. Ephraim from Alex, you say you've been complaining for years about this issue, and it is not only We Buy Cars. Can we hear your input in this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much, thank you for this swift response regarding We Buy Cars. We've been complaining about We Buy Cars before it can be so big, but now our consumers, Consumer Council, they don't stand up. Our government always they come, they caught while the pens are down. Always we complain about these things that are happening. I have a friend also. He bought a car from I can't mention the name of the dealership. He bought the car in Polokwane, but he's in Gauteng. He drove the car for 3 years. He caught on the 4th year. The car, they check it was stolen and recovered. So you see the netless that is happening in our country, and these people are nowhere to be found. When we complain about these issues, they don't come forth. I don't know who complain about We Buy Cars until they stand up and see. There are a lot of dealerships, private dealerships, that they buy repossessed cars and resell them. What will happen with me? I caught with the police with that car. It's going to be a mess. I'm with my family enjoying. Now I have to explain what supposed these people, consumers, they should have come in and make sure that these dealers, when they run like this, everywhere in Alexander, Louis Bota, is all of them the leadership of this car. They buy the repossessed cars and I will bet more.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
to mention it.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
Please
Thank you.
let them stand up, all those companies, and make sure that as customers, South Africans, we are not falling to that trap again of WeBuyCars. Let them stand up in the office. Let them be our lot more corners too. Let them not be sleeping on their jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ephraim. I think this outcome is actually showing that there is beginning to be movement. Maybe we're not happy with the pace, but such outcomes give us hope. We are running out of time, so I'm going to give Nicola a minute to give us her closing remarks. And in your closing remarks, maybe, Nicola, you should give our listeners an advice of what to look out for when they buy second-hand cars. What is it that they must do to avoid such consequences of getting defective cars or cars that are not safe to use or are stolen, as Ephraim is saying from Alex?
Thanks, Kafansi. So I just want to bring into the conversation something else that I wrote for IRL recently, is that Westbank was ordered to refund a buyer who had their premium, their monthly payments, because Westbank was found to be liable under the CPA at Supreme Court of Appeal level because the car was defective, in this case a Ford Ranger, but Westbank actually owns your vehicle. So that sets a serious precedent, and that's another avenue that consumers can follow, because there's the precedent at the Supreme Court, and unless Westbank goes to the Con Court, it is there. The other thing I would say is, and this is something I do if I buy another car, is I take somebody else with me who has superior knowledge to myself. And I understand cars, but I'll take somebody else with me who knows more than I do and can look at things like whether the gap between the panels is the same all the way around, whether the paint matches, which gives you an idea of whether it's been stolen. In a crash. When you pop the hood, there's usually a mark somewhere on the motor that tells you if it's stolen and recovered. You can ask for the full service history, which should be on the computer. And, for example, if you're looking at a particular brand and you go to one dealership, you can ask them to actually pull that full service history. I did that when I was looking at buying another car. I went to my dealership and I said to the guy I know very well, I'm looking at this car. So he said, what's the VIN number? And that's the number that's etched on the windscreen. And he pulled the full service history for me. So there's all sorts of things you can do that I suppose consumers shouldn't have to do, but they can do to help protect themselves so that they don't end up in a situation where they need to go to the NCC in the first place. But if you do pick up that something is defective after you've bought it, go to the NCC. Know your rights. There's lots of information on the internet about the Consumer Protection Act that spells it out in a way that everybody can understand. So definitely know your rights.
Thank you very much, Nicola. I think that's a good way to end it. In short, a smart buyer is an informed buyer, especially when it comes to second-hand goods. Prudence, in your closing remarks, can you please just let our listeners know how to reach the NCC if they have such complaints in future?
Thank you very much for the platform. The National Consumer Commission can be reached in all social platforms and online. And also, I think our offices in Pretoria are accessible. Please use our offices. I think if you use the search engines online, you can be able to find a way to reach us as the National Consumer Commission. And also, we in terms of the concern that is raised, yes, the highest number of complaints that we get as the National Consumer Commission is the second-hand motor vehicles. And we would like to urge consumers to not only use our offices, but as you said, to really do a lot of research before entering into, contract to buy vehicles. Just because it is shiny does not mean it is in a good condition. And also following what Nicola has said to the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment, the Van Niekerk case, just shows that the courts, including the National Consumer Tribunal, really are starting to support consumer protection and upholding the consumer protection principles. So consumers in South Africa can really rest assured that institutions like ourselves now including the courts, are starting to move towards consumer protection in a big way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prudence. That was Prudence Molewa, the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission, as well as Nicola Mawson, personal financier lead writer and IOL contributor. Thank you so much for sharing that powerful information with us.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.